everyone. So today I'm going to be going over the examples on special formulas for geometry. So let's look at example number 1. It says find the perimeter of the trapezoid. So they gave us a trapezoid in the coordinate plane. Now it's important to know that a trapezoid is a four-sided figure with bases that are parallel. So these are the bases, and we call these sides the legs. Okay, you can tell they're not parallel. All right, so if I want to find the perimeter, I want to add up all the sides. Well, the horizontal segments are nice and easy for us to add. We can just count from, along the x-axis. So from 4 to 6, this segment right here would be 2 units. And then from 0 to 6, this segment right here would be 6 units. And the vertical segments are also easy to add. We can just count on the y-axis. So from 0 to 5, that is 5 units. The questionable one is going to be this length right here, d. So how can we find it? This is a great place to apply the Pythagorean theorem. The first thing that we can do is we can actually drop a perpendicular segment straight down inside the rectangle. Inside the trapezoid. And you can see it's created a rectangle on the right side of that line. Now, we do need to do some measurements here. So if we think about this, we can find this length right here, which would be 4. And we know that this length would be 5. Now, I know we'd like to say that that segment that triangle is a Pythagorean triple, but it's not, because 5 would have to be the hypotenuse. So we have two choices here. We could either use the distance formula, which you read about in this section, or we could use the Pythagorean theorem, which is the distance formula, just in a little bit of a simpler way. So I would use the Pythagorean theorem. 4 squared plus 5 squared equals d squared. All right, so that's going to give me 16 plus 25 equals d squared. So 41 equals d squared. We take the square root of both sides, and we recognize that d would equal plus or minus root 41, but we're going to only look at the positive value because we're talking about the distance. Okay, so then I know that this segment right here is root 41. Now I want the perimeter of the entire figure, of the entire trapezoid. So we add them up. So 2 plus 5 plus 6 plus root 41, which gives me 13 plus root 41. If we want to approximate the answer, we can put root 41 into our calculator, and it's going to give me about 6.4. So 13 plus 6.4 would give me 19.4, and that would be the perimeter. Now you can see I used the Pythagorean theorem, but you also noted when you read this section the distance formula. The distance formula basically says to take x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Well, if you think about this, x2 minus x1 is this distance from 0 to 4. And y2 minus y1 is this distance from 0 to 5. Then we squared them, and then we took the square root. So the distance formula is just a quick shortcut. But again, it is a formula you have to know. But I'll expect that you guys feel comfortable with one of these two ways. All right, let's look at example 2. Example 2, it said that M is the midpoint of segment AB. A segment has 2 clear egg points. You can see them A and B. And it wants us to find the coordinates of B. We were given the midpoint. So one thing that I like to do is like mark my diagram with that. So I know that these 2 segments are equal. And to mark that on a diagram in geometry, you can use a little hash mark. So that indicates that those segments are equal to each other. All right, so in this reading, you learned about the midpoint formula. The midpoint formula says that the midpoint of each coordinate, so the midpoint, is equal to the average of the endpoints. And if it's in the coordinate plane, the midpoint of x would be the average of the endpoints the average of the x coordinates, and the midpoint of y would be the average of the y coordinates. Okay, and the formula they gave you was x1 plus x2 over 2. That would give me the x coordinate. And y1 plus y2 over 2. That would give me the y coordinate. That is the coordinate of the midpoint. All right, but this one's a little bit trickier because they gave me the midpoint. So I'm going to have to set up my own equation to solve. All right, so I want the midpoint of x. So let's find the coordinate of x. Okay, so the x coordinate of the midpoint. All right, so the midpoint, which is the coordinate of x is 3, is equal to -4 plus x2 over 2. Now I'm looking for the end point, so you can see that's the x2. All right, so I simplify. I'm going to clear fractions. That's going to give me 6 equals -4 plus x2. And then I can add 4 to both sides, giving me that 10 equals x2. So I know now that the x coordinate at point B is 10. Now I can do the exact same thing with y. The midpoint, the y coordinate of the midpoint is 2. So I can do -1 plus y2 over 2. All right, I'm going to clear fractions. That's going to give me 4 equals -1 plus y2. And then I'm going to add 1. And so 5 equals y2. And so that coordinate is 5. So the coordinates of B would be 10, 5. Okay? All right, just a few more questions, guys. Okay, so homework, problem 3. Homer has a corner lot, and the city's assessing a fee of $55 per linear foot for installing sidewalks. How much will the city assess? Okay, so we can see that this frontage here for the sidewalk is 100 feet. And it has a curved section of the sidewalk here, which is part of a circle. And then it also has this frontage that's 80 feet, okay? So the total cost is found by multiplying that $55 times the total number of linear feet that we have, okay? So, well, we have 100 here. So we have $100 or 100 feet plus the 80 feet. But we actually have, so we have this, we've added, this, we've added. We need to come up with this. Now, if you can notice, it's a circle and it's actually being cut into quarters. So it's a quarter of the circumference of a circle. Again, it's a quarter of the circumference of a circle. So the circumference formula for a circle is 2 pi r. And if I know that my radius, which they told me was 10, that gives me a total circumference of 20 pi. If I take 25 pi and I cut it in fourths, that would give me 5 pi. So I have to add that 5 pi to the 180 I already have. So I have 180 plus 5 pi, okay, which is, let me start over. So I have to add 180 plus 5 pi, so 180 plus 5 pi gives me 195.71 approximately feet. And I have to multiply that by 55 to get the cost that they're going to charge him. So 195.71 times 55. Oh my gosh, they're going to assess him $10,764 approximately. Wow, that's a lot. All right, last question. Find the height of a cylinder whose volume is 1,000 cubic feet and whose radius is 8. Okay, so you have to use that formula you read about. The formula for the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared, which is the area of the base, times the height. So these are actually not all that hard. All you basically have to do is plug in what you have to solve for what you don't have. So we're going to substitute 1,000 in for the volume. Pi we leave alone. We have a radius of 8, so that's going to be 64, r squared, times h. Okay, so now I'm going to divide both sides to solve for 8 by 64 pi. And I'm going to simplify that. It looks like that's going to give me about, 125 over 8 pi. Okay, and so if I round that, that's going to leave me with h. If I round that, I do 125 divided by 8 pi, and test that on your calculator, and that's going to give you about 4.97, so almost 5, approximately 5 feet. All right, guys, I wanted to go through those examples. It may be helpful for you to read them again in case you missed anything or to rewatch this video. We're going to be talking about working with these formulas this week. So have a great day.